It's Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. And of course, there's all kinds of things going on in the world, and we'll be talking about those here on World Edition. Of course, we'll be talking about some of the political things later on this evening on World Politics. But in terms of what's going on in the world, severe turbulence has injured over 30 and diverted an Air Europa flight to Brazil. So it looks like there was one of the passengers says, "We thought we were going to die," and this was on a Boeing plane after that severe turbulence. There was even a video of a passenger seemingly stuck in an overhead bin. So that had to be some serious turbulence if they could get a person into that overhead bin and to be stuck in it and all along those lines because they're not that big. It's been a minute since I've been on a plane, but I know that there usually not all that much room in those overhead bins and all in that space. But Viktor Orban is definitely in Kiev for the first time since the Russia Ukraine war began. So he is visiting Kyiv for surprise talks with Volodymyr Zelensky. So who knows? Maybe this is some efforts around a ceasefire or something along those lines, since apparently he is one of Putin's greatest European allies, and he's made his first trip to Kyiv since the start of that war. Of course, it might also be him talking about his own concerns about what Russia may decide to do heading his way as well. But it'll be interesting to see what comes out of these talks. And at least 27 are dead in a stampede during a religious gathering in northern India. So dozens were killed after a stampede at that religious event. And definitely that's something else that folks will be talking about in the news. And you know that it's not just here in the US that we've got contentious elections, but they've also got one in the UK as well. So Sunak and Starmer are hammering their key messages as polling days near. So they're actually coming to their election fairly soon. And it looks like the Britain's Labour Party is set to be the winner over the current ruling Conservatives. So we'll see whether that's the case or not the case, and all along those lines. And Israel has ordered new evacuations in southern Gaza, prompting the transfer of hospital patients. So they're saying that 250,000 have been hit by Israel's new Gaza evacuation order. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And of course, Hurricane Beryl is barreling toward Jamaica as a Category 5 storm after it practically flattened Grenada and all along those lines. So it looks like it is in a storm track around the Caribbean. So I don't think it's supposed to hit any sort of landfall here in the United States. But, you know, hurricanes have been known to switch directions and all along those lines. But for right now, it looks like we're safe and all in that space. The looks like the drug gang turf war has dumped dozens of bodies in a Mexico truck. So that's definitely something that people are paying attention to as well in terms of like not just world events there, but also how it might even impact things on a political landscape on the world side and all in that space. And Le Pen is accusing Macron of an administrative coup. So definitely that's something there are going on, and apparently France's Muslims are fearing for their future as Le Pen's far right party surges. So definitely this will be interesting how this plays out as well. So there's a number of things that are going on in that space. And Israel's Netanyahu has slammed the release of the Gaza hospital chief. So Israel freed the Gaza hospital chief held without charges for 7 months. And the prime minister said it was a grave mistake to free him and all in that space. And the mother of Israeli hostage Noah Argamani dies weeks after her daughter's rescue. So Laura Argamani, who is the mother of the rescued hostage, passed away, and that was after passing away of brain cancer. So definitely, that's some sad news out of the world as well. And they're saying that Israel is risking a disastrous war against Hezbollah for political reasons, according to some former U.S. officials. And Blinken is saying that war, Anthony Blinken, that is, may erupt in Lebanon despite none of the sides wanting one. So definitely that is something else that's going on. And Iran is facing a rare runoff presidential election. So it looks like there are some runoffs heading that way as well, as it is a runoff between reformist and ultra conservative presidential candidates amid a record low turnout. So apparently it was a record low turnout in that space. And North Korea claims its test of a ballistic missile capable of carrying a huge warhead. So that is what they are saying. So they are saying that their recent missile tests involved new ballistic missile with super large warhead. So they are doing a little posturing and claiming what they can do, and we'll see if that is actually the case or not the case. And protests and arrests as anti-Syrian riots rock Turkey. So definitely that is something going on as well. And Turkish officials are calling for calm as social media hysteria is apparently fueling the anti-Syrian riots. And Tesla's quarterly vehicle deliveries fall almost 5% annually, but they did exceed their expectations. So that's a little bit of economic news coming our way as well. And Russia says a strikes destroyed several Ukrainian fighter jets. The Ukrainian Air Force parked 6 Su-27 fighters in the open 100 miles from the front lines. And as there are reports that a Russian missile destroyed 2 of them, even though I think the Russians are trying to claim that it was more than that and all along those lines. And by the way, we have our first millennial saint. So apparently, the Italian teen Carlos Acutis is the first millennial saint, and he's being touted because of being a quote unquote God's influencer. So he is a video gaming teenager, and he's become the first Catholic millennial saint as the Pope and the Cardinals approved his canonization. So it does look like we've got a millennial saint, and it looks like he's coming from the world of influencing and all in that space. On a more sadder note, at least 9 are dead in South Korean capital Seoul as a car plowed into a crowd, and all in that kind of way. And there are some folks that saying that a coup attempt was thwarted in Ukraine. That is what some security services are saying as well. So it looks like Ukraine has thwarted plots to overthrow their government in a failed coup attempt. And we also know there was a failed coup attempt in Bolivia as well. So that's something going on that international scene. And South Africa's unprecedented new coalition has 7 parties in the cabinet. So they are definitely getting a lot of varying voices and all in that space. So the new South African government is inspiring in some hopes and fears. And the Taliban is telling the West to look past harsh edicts on Afghan women and girls and some of the things that they have put out there in terms of that kind of thought and all along those lines. Let me get to some of the U.S. news, and then I'll bring in our esteemed panel as well and see what they've got to say about some of these stories and all along those lines. But it looks like Trooper Michael Proctor is relieved of duty after his testimony in the Karen Reed trial. So, yes, that trial is going on as well. Well, actually, the trial ended in a mistrial with a starkly divided hung jury. So it looks like they had a hung jury in that area. So I don't know whether they'll try to retry it or what will go on. I'll have to ask Nick since he's the lawyer in the bunch, along with some others that are having legal background as well. And apparently, the U.S. police shot and killed a 13-year-old who wielded a replica gun. So that is something else that I'm sure people that are in the gun space and they're like trying to get restrictions, we'll be talking about as well. So it's a South Asian boy that was shot and killed by the New York Police Department. And apparently he was a Burmese refugee. And the police are saying that he pointed a replica gun. And definitely that's something that folks are paying attention to as well. And apparently there's anger within the Biden world. And definitely the Axios is reporting on what some White House aides are saying post debate. And definitely there'll be a lot of conversation, as there has been, about how the debate went, what should happen in the September debate, and even whether President Biden should stay in the race or not stay in the race as well. And speaking of Biden and his opponent, Biden seized on the Trump's Supreme Court triumph to seek redemption after his debate debacle. And definitely it looks like Trump himself is trying to find ways to use that at his advantage, meaning the Supreme Court ruling and all along those lines. So it looks like attorneys are facing a deadline to wrap their January 6th prosecution. So definitely we'll see what that goes on as well. And the Supreme Court decision overturning Chevron deference is something that I know we brought up on one of our past shows and everything. So the Supreme Court just apparently limited federal power, and healthcare is feeling the shockwaves. And by the Biden administration is to announce the first national heat protections for workers. So apparently, Biden is to announce heat rules as climate-related deaths are on the rise. So apparently, there is a new plan that's going to be out there that will protect millions of U.S. workers from extreme heat and all in that kind of place. And Representative Victoria Spartz is charged with weapons violations at the Dulles airport. So the GOP representative, Victoria Spartz, is charged with a weapons violation, as I guess she was going through Dulles on a way to someplace or another. But it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that way. And a judge is siding with states over Biden and allowing gas export projects to move forward. So the court blocked the Biden administration's ban on new LNG exports. So definitely that is something else that'll be talked about as well. So, and the Democrats are urging the Biden campaign to shift the course after what happened with the debate and all in that kind of a way. And abortion rights supporters are putting a winning strategy to the test, apparently, in Arkansas. So that is something else that we're seeing, is that the abortion rights issue is an issue not just for the national campaign, but also for campaigns on the state level as well. So that's just some of the news items. And like I said, I'll bring in my folks, see what they've got to say about a number of these situations and all along those lines. So like I said, I've got Rick Rosner with me. So it's always good to have Rick with me. I've got Sasha Starr with me. And somewhere around here is Nick Valveda. So we've got a number of folks that can add some context to some of those stories that I talked about and everything. I guess the first thing I got to ask Sasha is, since I know Ukraine, Russia, and China will be coming on later, but what is his take on this visit by Orban to visit Zelensky, which apparently is taking place today? And like I said, I do know some people that have said that Hungary could be the next target of Russia and everything, but I was just wondering your take on this surprise visit.
Well, Orban is begging Zelensky to consider some peace negotiations with Russia and try to end this war, because that's what Putin wants, and that's what Orban, representing Putin, delivered message to Zelensky. Well, we'll see what's coming out of that. I'm not overly optimistic that Zelensky will even consider that, but we'll see. Everything is possible. But I have a question to Nick, though. With yesterday's ruling of Supreme Court, and now that President is immune in his official acts, what prevents Biden to argue that in interest of democracy and the American public, to arrest and put in jail all Supreme Court, Donald Trump and all top this Republican Party, and to win unopposed election, because they all will be in jail, and he's completely immune. Nobody can even argue about that. Some people will be unhappy for sure, but it doesn't matter. You cannot make everybody happy, right?
Well, the thing is, remember the way they worded it, Sasha. They go, he is immune from official acts.
That is official
acts.
But that is
well, that begs the question. That begs the question whether that's an official act or it's an unofficial act. So they left it open for interpretation. In other words,
there will be nobody to interpret.
He may not go to jail on that, but he would have a hard time enforcing it. There was a case that took place decades ago where John Marshall, this was called the Trail of Tears, where the Indians were forced off the reservation in Georgia and moved to Oklahoma. Right. And Andrew Jackson ordered that and sent them over there. The Supreme Court ruled that that was illegal. And Andrew Jackson said, now you've made your ruling, now enforce it. Okay, which is a big problem. Okay. So, he could make a decision, but the real question is who's going to enforce it, or it's enforceable. But let's go back to what your friend Donald Trump said in front of all the people in Nevada. He goes, tips will not be taxable under my administration. He's got a serious problem with it. he doesn't get to make that decision. No one called him on it. In other words, taxes have to come out of the Congress and then signed by the president. He can't make a sweeping unilateral decision not to allow people to pay taxes. And the media missed it. I'm going like, how can you miss that? That he cannot make that decision. In other words, so there, we have a system of checks and balances. And on this program, I said what they're going to do is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to split the baby. Some acts will be considered, official acts. For example, you declare war on Kuwait, or let's say Iraq. You send people in, you murder people, basically, and you're immune. It's an official act. If he was in the White House, he turns around and shoots the vice president, that would be an unofficial act. But notice how they word it. It gives a lot of leeway to the lower courts to make that particular decision. But that wasn't the biggest decision by the Supreme Court. The biggest decision, which we're going to go over Monday on economics with the Honorable David M. Walker, that will affect everybody that's listening, is the Chevron decision. And people, it's almost like they miss that. This whole little thing about immunity, brushed aside, minor people. The Chevron decision will affect everybody listening to this. This, for the first time in 40 years, basically curtails government agencies from going out, writing the law, and enforcing it, which unfortunately I've had to fight for almost 40 years.
Speaking of enforcement and all along those lines, there is another issue, and maybe the Chevron will have an tied to this, what I'm going to bring up as well. But, Latin America is made up of several countries. It's not just one country and everything. And apparently we have come into an agreement with one of the Latin American countries, because the U.S. has agreed to help Panama deport migrants crossing in Darien Gap. So Jose Paul Mulino was sworn in as Panama's new president, and he is vowing that migration crackdown as one of his issues that he will deal with. And apparently meaning the U.S. is going to pay to repatriate the migrants. So I know we had said that with the Mexicans were going to pay for the wall, but apparently in this case, we're going to pay to help the migrants.
And there is so much more than that. To add insult to injury, Panama beat U.S. soccer team badly in this Copa America championship. U.S. is out of the tournament already, and this was incredible. Yesterday I saw the game against Uruguay. Uruguay just made a mess out of U.S. team, and actually it's the first championship that Canada advanced, which is one of the horrible soccer teams ever, and U.S. failed to advance. However, it's all garbage compared to a European championship.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to go back to I want to go back to Biden for a sec. Biden first entered the Senate 51 and a half years ago. He's the very epitome of not rocking the boat. I mean, of doing things traditionally. So there were a zillion tweets yesterday saying, Biden, use your new powers to do all this stuff. Expand the court, arrest Alito and Clarence Thomas. And that's just not Biden's way. He's an institutionalist. He was a senator for 36 years, VP for 8 years. He's not going to get all crazy, no matter how many.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to do that. I don't think that's his nature, but there might be some people in his party that urge him to do certain things, but I would agree that that's not his nature and everything. I did have a question for you, Rick, and everything, because apparently, and I'm just now hearing about this, there was street takeovers in downtown LA, and apparently there were cars set ablaze, and definitely there were even buses vandalized, and definitely they were tagged with graffiti and all along those lines. But do you have any reports on what this protest or whatever was going on? Because apparently it definitely rocked the LA area as people were doing some sort of
I have no idea. I mean, usually when there's a street takeover, it's just people doing drifting, like as in Fast and Furious. Gotcha. But this seems like it was more than just people with BMWs burning out their tires.
Yeah, I have to do a little bit more research to find out what that was all about and everything along those lines. But if he was to exercise those powers, meaning Biden, as I do a little bit more research on this, what should he exercise the power on? I've heard two suggestions, which is arrest Alito and Thomas, and I've also heard this notion of maybe even arresting the entire Supreme Court and everything along those lines. But what if we were going to have him exercise these powers that apparently he's got?
I don't think he's going to do any. I think his pitch to the American people is, if you want normal, sane government, go with me. And the other guy is a radical who's burning everything down.
But the other problem is that it goes beyond the executive powers. See, that's the other problem that you see. Even though he couldn't be prosecuted for it, if he goes, I want you to go arrest the Supreme Court, okay? That's beyond the executive power. So he doesn't have the real power to do it. Now, what he could do is say, well, I'm going to bring in the military, because he does have control of the military, and have the military arrest the Supreme Court. Now, that would be very interesting. But again, I think the real problem is that does that even fall under official acts or unofficial acts? And that goes back to the judiciary.
Nick, I agree. It will take 10 years to figure out whether it's official act or if it's not official act. Biden by that time will not be even alive yet.
Well, okay, let's get rid of Biden and Trump. Let's bring in the Donald. Okay, and Donald doesn't like a particular judge. Okay, can he, because he is the commander in chief, so he does have the capacity, can he order the military to come in and arrest the judge and take him away? Which is again,
Biden did behave lawlessly yesterday. He got up in the White House and he gave a very short address about how crappy the ruling about presidential immunity was, and now right wingers are attacking him for violating the Hatch Act, which is you're not supposed to do political work using the White House as a backdrop. Now, Trump did this all the time, and like Nick said, yeah, just go ahead and enforce it. Nobody ever enforces the Hatch Act, which is designed to keep politics out of government.
Well, speaking of things that,
it's also very interesting. If Biden is still admitted before the Delaware bar, you're not supposed to disparage the judiciary. It's part of the canon of ethics of lawyers. It's something that, since I'm licensed in a whole bunch of courts, including the Supreme Court, I have to be very careful. And Mark throws me these curveballs and I duck them, because you're not to disparage the judiciary. And so we looked at Biden. Let's go take a look at what he did. He disparaged the Supreme Court of the United States. Is he subject to disbarment from the Delaware courts? I will leave that to our legal scholars to answer. It's beyond my pay grade. But
well,
it's
it'd be interesting to see how that's handled.
And Joe Biden be disbarred. Remember that Bill Clinton was disbarred.
Yeah, he was disbarred. But speaking of all of that and everything, an issue that has come up and is oftentimes talked about, the climate change folks love to talk about it and everything. And I don't know how enforceable it will be and everything. So this is my question to folks. Because the other story that I mentioned at the end of the report is that Biden is apparently going to put some rules into effect to protect millions of U.S. workers from extreme heat. And we do know that there are some jobs like construction workers and others that are constantly out in the heat. So I guess that he's going to put restrictions as to how long they can be out in the heat and how much water they've got to have, and a number of other things that hopefully can be enforced and everything, because apparently they are saying that climate-related deaths are on the rise as we've had temperatures that have been increasing. But how is this going to be enforceable? Because I know a lot of times, even when there were pollution regulations, a lot of times it was difficult to enforce those pollution regulations. And I don't know how you can enforce something that is not even controlled by us, because the sun isn't controlled.
It may not be. In other words, this is the big impact of the Chevron decision. I'm telling you right now, Chevron will have a bigger impact on everybody's life than the stupid immunity case. The stupid immunity case is good for media, good for us to talk about. We'll talk about for a week and then it'll be all gone. But the Chevron case, we were going to be with us for the next 40 years, perhaps. It was around for 40 years. It gave the administrative state deference to do almost anything. In other words, create laws, enforce it. And we fight it all the time. In other words, I'm in battles all the time with these government agencies that literally create laws and ram it down my clients' throats. And they want to know what you can do. I say, you can go to court and lose. Why is that? Because they give deference to the administrative agency. They're presumed to be correct. It's like this, Mark. A police officer arrests you and says you said something you never did. They're given deference. Police officers considered to be not guilty, and you're presumed to be guilty. In the IRS, it's the same way. When we fight them, do you know the IRS has a presumption of being correct? If you go in front of any court in America, go look at it. So if the IRS said you cheated on your taxes, you said, no, I didn't, they're presumed to be correct. Chevron changes all this. For the first time, we now have a level playing field. And I'm telling you right now, you can listen to all this immunity case. The Chevron case by the Supreme Court will have the biggest impact on every person's life in America, more so than the immunity case.
Nick, and what can you do about it?
And the fact that these agencies...
When we were discussing what danger it is and how horrible it is, then what you can, or we, or whoever can do about it? Just nothing. Just talk about it.
Well, the thing is, the immunity case deals with one person who's the president, and they left a lot open.
No, it's much more than that. It makes immune all further president. And what I'm saying, my point is very simple. For Joe Biden, who now has immunity, he has one of three things to do. Number one, resign, get Kamala Harris or whoever, and that's the end of story. Number two, sit there waiting for election, lose its election, and go away. Number three, to weaponize all power in his hands, to arrest all Supreme Court, Trump, all top Republicans, put all of them in jail, win in a post-election, and then figure out what to do next.
Okay, see, you're living in a dream world, Sasha. I mean, the thing is, it's almost like this. They left it open to official and unofficial acts.
There will be no acts anymore. Once he will put in jail,
they left it open to
Republicans. There will be no longer qualifications.
One is official, one is unofficial.
It will be all done deal. He will do that unopposed because there will be no opposition. Opposition will be in jail.
Hold on a second. Sasha, hold on a second.
Sasha, a bunch of people. He's not guilty because it was an official act. You know,
nobody knows what's official act and what's not. Nobody. Exactly. One who has the power. To have a power is to get to jail Supreme Court, get to jail Trump and all top Republicans, have accumulating all power, and then you don't care anymore about official acts and unofficial acts. There will be 10 years litigation, whatever it is. Those litigators who still will be alive in 10 years, so they will say, you know what, we don't know, okay, we'll get it to a lower court. Well, lower court doesn't know. He will get to Supreme Court, and they will go on for another 20 years. Okay, that's the reality. Whoever has the power does the job. Whoever has the power, go away. That's how it works. In today's world, that's how it works. Whoever has the power rules. Who doesn't have a power has to go away. Just lay down and die. That's all.
No, Sasha.
I agree.
Sasha and Nick, hold on a second. No, Sasha and Nick, hold on a second, because the question I've got comes back to what I just asked about the heat proposal and everything, because you're going to love this one, Nick, as will Dave when we come back on Economic Monday on next week and everything, because apparently one of the regulations that they are wanting to do and everything, and this is a ruling that was announced on Tuesday with all these high temperatures going on, but it's going to require employers, this means all employers, to establish, are you ready for this? A new job. Shaquille, I know you're going to love this. The new job is heat safety coordinator. So every company is supposed to have a heat safety coordinator, and they're also supposed to undergo extreme heat safety training, create and regularly update emergency heat response plans, and provide workers with shade and work and water. So apparently we are creating a whole new job for all of the companies around the world. So even Chevron and everybody else is supposed to have a heat safety coordinator.
All that does ultimately is it just creates an extra layer of bureaucracy within big companies.
Right.
And it's not effective. It doesn't work. They tried this with the mining companies here in Australia, especially in Western Australia. So, you know, some of the temperatures there get up over the 40-degree mark, 40, 45 degrees, stuff like that, which I think in Fahrenheit, that's like 110 or something. So it's hot. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to have these cool rooms where the workers every hour would come out of the heat, go into a cool room, sit there for 15 minutes, get some cold water, and then go back to work again. Now, that is absolutely ridiculous. You're going to make the person sick by doing that. And it takes about 15 minutes to start up and then to shut down again. So it's just these policies are just so badly thought out. But I do want to actually come to what Nick said. The fact that the agencies are kicking and screaming about this, saying that they're not going to have the resources to be able to prosecute things properly, well, that's a good thing, in my opinion, actually, because these agencies are wreaking havoc with especially small businesses. And if you are unfortunate enough to get caught up in some obscure regulation that you've never heard of, I mean, for most people in America wouldn't know this, but in some cases, if you get caught with a lobster on your property, you could be federally indicted. And you may not have known anything about that lobster. It may have had nothing to do with you. But you're going to get prosecuted for that. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, you see very creative and aggressive prosecutors that go after people. So I think this is actually a good thing, and it will force those agencies and force the government in general to be able to look at these processes and say, right, we need to change a few things and bring things more into line with what people actually want. Lastly, to this immunity case, let's not blow things out of proportion. Firstly, even if you limit it just to official acts, if the claim being made is that Donald Trump deliberately tried to subvert an election, that's not an official act by any stretch of the imagination. But just coming to official acts and not official acts, look, government agencies, police officers, etc., already benefit from qualified immunity. And when they do something which is not covered by qualified immunity, they don't have the immunity. So, for example, if you're a police officer that kills a black guy and you've breached his civil rights, you are personally civilly liable as well as criminally liable. You can't hide behind your qualified immunity. Right. Whereas if you just gave him a speeding ticket, but your speed radar was malfunctioning or something, well, you're not going to be civilly or criminally liable for that because you were just exercising the duties of your job. So I think people are blowing this qualified immunity or the presidential immunity out of proportion.
Shaquille, just a quick question, because this is another news story that I'm curious about. I'd love to hear everybody talks about this, because sometimes we talk about the class divide and everything along those lines. And apparently there is a ex-billionaire, we won't get into his ethnicity or anything along those lines, but apparently he defrauded or was the architect of a $1 billion, that's billion with a B, fraud and everything. And apparently these two individuals have now, at least one of them, I'm not sure, both of them, gotten a 7.5-year sentence for defrauding investors that are connected with Goldman and Google as well. So I was just wondering, if you defrauded that much money, is 7.5 years a fair amount of time, or should they have gotten more? Because apparently the
white-collar crimes are always
got 7.5 years.
White-collar crimes always are prosecuted more softly than well, and on average than like.
I was surprised. I'm going to tell you, I was really surprised that Bernie Madoff actually got such a long sentence. I thought, yeah, okay, he'll get 15 years or 20 years or something like that, even though he ripped off thousands and thousands of investors to the tune of, tens of billions of dollars. 7.5 years it seems very low, doesn't it, compared to the penalties you can get for other things. But, I mean, what do you do? What's the alternative?
Yeah, I want to go back to heat deaths for a second, because I found some numbers. Heat deaths are in the U.S. are up about 40% in the past 2 years, up from fewer than 1,600 in 2021 to 2,300 in 2023. And it's the deadliest form of weather. It kills more people than hurricanes, than floods. So it's a thing, and I don't know if Biden's rules will help, but I mean, it kills a ton of people.
Yeah, it definitely kills a lot of people.
But is this not saying, though, that Great. So we now know that the death rate's gone up in relation to heat. I don't know whether there's other factors at play, but okay, great. We better do something about that. So let's all install solar panels. But this is the problem: is that there is no sensible kind of talk about what we should actually do to create energy and do it in an environmentally sustainable way, in the least damaging way to the environment as possible. There's no real conversation about that. It's just been so corrupted by the big money of lobbyists.
Yeah. And speaking of conversations in that realm and everything, apparently in some social posts, I'm not sure if it was on True Social or where he posted this and everything, but apparently former President Trump is already looking at things that he may be doing to kind of like Sasha's point and everything, because he's already amplifying calls to jail Biden, Harris, Pence, and McConnell and everything. And he's also had a post calling for a televised military tribunal for Liz Cheney. And we know that they are not the best of friends either. And apparently Liz Cheney slammed Donald Trump over his treason post. So I'm wondering, is this just a lot of blowing smoke, or will he actually try to do these kind of trials should he win the election? Because apparently
Trump says whatever pops into his head, and his base either loves it or just is like shrugs it off. And the press, have gotten in the habit of not, covering it a lot, because it's just Trump saying more bullshit. Well, he doesn't have a plan particularly. Everything's improvisation.
Well, speaking of improvisation, there is a California law, and you used to work in bars and clubs, so I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. But apparently, a new California law is requiring bars and clubs to offer drug testing devices, I think, to protect against spiking, because we do know that in various bars and everything, sometimes there are different people that are spiking the different drinks that you may be having.
You get roofied. All right, so I started working in bars in the 80s. And back then, bars were where you went to try to hook up, to try to get laid. And most of that business has moved online. You get laid by swiping on Tinder. But people's bar behavior has deteriorated. In the 80s, people went to bars 100 nights a year, maybe. It was a big part of people's lives, and people knew how to behave in bars. Now you have a bunch of weirdos stalking bars and, yes, trying to stick powder in people's drinks. So, yeah, it makes sense for, if you think, if some creepy guy has slipped a Mickey into your drink, yeah, it's great if the bar has a kit.
Yeah, but apparently that's going to be required for all bars and clubs to have that and everything.
I don't think it should be an extra. I don't know how much it's going to cost. Is every bar going to have to pay for all these kits, and the kits run $100 a piece? I wouldn't like that for bars, but I would like to make some kind of easy test available.
And I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we can do some research and find out.
There used to be diabetes test strips, like just little pieces of paper you dip in your pee, and if it turns a certain color, you have diabetes. So, if it's just a little slip of paper you dip in your drink, and if it turns pink, you've been roofied.
And what are you going to do though? You're gonna test it every sip. I don't know. It's going to be.
Yeah,
I don't know. Some bars have a drink you can ask for that is code for.
Well, I imagine it's going to be similar to what they were doing with like when you would go into a restaurant as we were getting out of COVID, and you would have those testing stations where people would test your breath and other things in order to make sure that you were able to go to the restaurant and all along those lines. So my guess is there's going to be maybe when you're going into the bar and when you're going out of the bar, and it's right there at the bar. But I don't know that for a fact, but that would be how I would think that they would do it, since they're trying to implement it on a statewide level and everything. So my guess is it'll be there into the various bars and clubs, and it'll be there just like those testing stations were for restaurants back in the latter days of the pandemic, as it was going through its 3 or 4 year period of us all worrying about what was going on in that space and everything. I was wondering y'all's thoughts around this, and everybody, including we got Jacoby that has joined us. But the Democratic donors are giving Biden, apparently, and I know you say this already done, Shaquille, a 2-week grace period for the polls to fall after the debate. So it looks like the donors are giving him a little bit of leeway and everything. And by the way, on a similar note, but slightly different, Trump is bringing back this notion that he can end the war in one day, and the Russia's UN ambassador is saying that that's not going to happen and everything. But I was just wondering our thoughts on both of these, because apparently Trump
who are these mysterious donors that are controlling the Democratic Party? I keep hearing that the Democratic Party is controlled by the little guy. It sounds to me what you just admitted, Mark. It's not. It's controlled by the big donors, because they're the ones that are giving Biden the ultimatum. It's not the little donors. So it's the Democratic Party is just a pack of lies. And one of their lies is, oh, we're for the little guy. When you just admitted right here in television, it ain't the little guy, baby. It's the big guys who are part of the
I would say the donors on both sides
are on the American public. And
I would say
so Mark, I'll say this to you. I think
yes,
Donald
they
Trump
do lie. They may not lie as much as the Republicans, but please, they're nothing but another political pack of lies, including Janet Yellen, who said, well, we're going to spend more money and that's going to reduce inflation. Why is she should be fired right for that. Where's Joe Biden? Oh, that's right. The guy can't remember what day it is. Sorry. But if he was awake and he listened to Janet Yellen, he should fire Janet Yellen just for making that statement. We're going to spend more money, and when we spend lots of money, inflation will go down. Every moron knows that that is not true. And
apparently Joe Biden's other half is now the co-star of Vogue.
But again, we don't have a leader. We have Joe
Biden
on the wheel.
Cover star.
So
of Vogue.
let me just respond to your original question, Mark.
Yeah.
Look, Donald Trump says a lot of things, and I think most people just accept that, hey, it's Donald Trump being Donald Trump. It's really frustrating, I think, for not just for Americans, but for the whole world, because you don't know whether he actually believes the crap that he says. You know, is some of this stuff that he says actually going to be real policy, or is he just saying it to appeal to his base, or what? But the problem is that Joe Biden is clearly old. He's clearly struggling and has been doing that for years. And there's just been a complete refusal by big media to admit that. And what's happened is it's come out in the debates in a way that just cannot be spun. And they're trying as hard as they can to spin it. I mean, Nancy Pelosi tried to make the claim that Donald Trump was the one who had dementia. Like, it's just silly. And I think that Democrats have just got to give it up. They know they're going to lose this election no matter what they do. And what they should be doing is putting their effort and energy into trying to counter Donald Trump by increasing their lead in the House and in the Senate. That's what they should be doing, because the presidency is gone, and they just need to come to terms with that reality.
Yeah. Oh, Jacoby has a point to counterpoint.
Just to point out, a few topics ago, I think it was a matter of fact, 2 topics ago, Mark had a question. That question was, is Trump really going to go through with all this crazy stuff that he says that he's going to do, or is that just bluster? Is he going to hold these military tribunals? Is he going to throw these individuals in jail? Yet we brushed by that and said, well, but now we're going to spend 30 minutes on how old Joe Biden is. Think about what we are really doing here. We don't care if a crazy person gets a gun, but we only care if that crazy person is old. That's nonsense. Right now, you have a gentleman who's running for president, who repeatedly lies, who's already threatened all this revenge stuff, who's already told what he's going to do in terms of, hey, we're going to pull out of NATO, we're going to give Ukraine to Russia, we're going to bomb everybody in Gaza and let the Palestinians die. We're going to hold a military tribunal for a Republican I disagreed with. We're going to hold all these people that you hate in jail because you know what? they ran against me. And because I broke the law, they tried to hold me accountable. So you know what? I'm going to make up some stuff and hold them accountable because that's what we're going to do. So what? I tried to overthrow an election, but you know what? He's old. He's old. I get it. Biden is old. And don't get me wrong. Biden, I am of the same mindset that, yes, the Democrat Party should start looking for a plan B, especially coming off of that debate. That is what is instilled in everybody's mind, all the fears that he is old. But again, we cannot ignore the craziness that Donald Trump was putting forward. And that is the problem, that we are doing the same thing that all the media is doing. And again, that goes back to my theory, is that everybody was putting their hopes on Biden because absolutely nobody wanted Trump except for those 33% that are diehard locked in on Trump. Independents, everybody was looking for something else. This is why I say there still is a way forward, and there is an option forward if there were a legitimate candidate that everybody could feel comfortable with. But again, we gloss over the crazy person wanting to kill everybody just to talk about how old this other dude is.
In that same
Chitali, you didn't mention Plan C. Plan C is to declare a war against Iran or whoever, declare a military order in the United States, get the guards, immediately arrest Supreme Court, Trump, top Republican Party officials, go to election unopposed, and that's it. And the power is with Democrats for years to come. And if somebody will start object to it, it wasn't proper, it wasn't so, it will take 10, 15 years to get to the bottom of it. If Biden, while he's still alive, will play a delay game, and he doesn't even need to, because he's not going to be around in, say, 5 years' time.
This is just so
Hold on,
silly.
let's-
This is why your
talk
country's
about-
so divided,
let's
because you don't
talk
just
about-
talk about stuff.
Let's talk about what's actually going on, which is, it's risky to replace Biden. And what they seem to be doing is just getting Biden out there. He made a short public address yesterday. He seemed fine. It wasn't 90 minutes. It was more like 5 minutes. But they're just going to keep putting Biden out there to show that the debate appearance was trying to make it look like an aberration and trying to show that Biden's fine. And for the time being, that's what's happening, is Biden is making public appearances in which he's coherent.
Hey, Rick, just along
Let's
those
go,
same lines.
Rick, here's the issue, right? Here's the issue. Jacoby just made a comment about, Donald Trump said that even though I overthrew an election, I'm going to do all this stuff. I mean, Donald Trump never said that, right? So we're just saying stuff, and Republicans just say stuff about Democrats, and it divides your country, and nobody can have a proper, reasonable conversation about what's actually going on in your country. The reality of it is, when we're talking about Republicans, the Republicans are going to be in disarray after Donald Trump, because who is going to be there? What's their policy going to be? Are they going to go back to more traditional Republican ideals, or are they going to continue down, a very crazy sort of path that Donald Trump's brought them down? 18 months ago, I said 70% of Americans want neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden, which means that there's probably a 100% chance that those are the two candidates for your next election. That's exactly what's happened. The political system gives you guys exactly what the majority of people don't want. Now, the comment that was made earlier that only 33% of people actually wanted Donald Trump, that's not true. The numbers were close to 50-50. But the reason I keep coming back to Democrats is, the reason that you have such a weak candidate is because your media just refused to admit what we could all see. We could all see it. Okay? Oh, no, he didn't trip up the stairs 3 times. It's just that the wind was really strong. Like, it's just ridiculous. Nobody in the world believed that. So why do it? Why do it? all you're doing is you're pissing people off, and you're getting people to a point where they look at the Democrats and they look at the big media and they just go, if you won't even tell me the truth about this, why should I trust you on anything else? Now, had you been more truthful and more honest about the issues that were legitimately brought up, not by hardcore radical right-wingers, but by moderates, by people within the Democrats Party themselves, if you had have just been more honest about Joe Biden's deteriorating health conditions at his age, you would have a better candidate today. You might have a Gretchen Whitmer or a Gavin Newsom or somebody. And if you had, just to use Gavin Newsom as an example, maybe the Republicans wouldn't have been able to go with Donald Trump. Maybe you'd have to have somebody younger like a Ron DeSantis or a Nikki Haley or something. But you didn't do that because you spent so much time bullshitting everybody and telling everybody that what you're saying isn't really what's happening, and you're a nut job for thinking it.
So I want to answer a question. Hold on, I want to answer a question submitted by a viewer in the lower third, asking if just a short answer. The lower third, the distracted driving laws work. In California, they don't work. In LA, we don't have enough cops to enforce it. And I think the first offense is either $50 or $100. Nobody pays any attention to just, don't drive on your phone laws.
And he was actually asking that to Jacoby. So Jacoby, any thoughts?
In terms of the distracted driving or what Shaq just stated? Because on what
distracted driving, and then what Shaq said.
He's distracted right now while he's driving. So what are we supposed to be doing?
The question was addressed to you.
I'm actually riding along, so I'm good to go. But distracted driving laws, yes. I didn't read the question because it's tiny on the phone. Question for the guy driving.
It says, question for the guy driving. What do you feel about distracted driving laws? Does it help get all these crazy drivers on their cell phone off the road, or is it toothless?
It doesn't help get everybody off the road. Everybody's distracted driving because social media and the internet is right in your hand all the time. So all the stuff is picked up. So distracted driving laws are good because they get some, they don't get all. So it's helpful in the sense because it deters more than it catches. But yeah, distracted driving laws help. I'm not really that, I'm not against distracted driving laws. I think they work. But in terms of
it doesn't matter to you, Jacoby, because you're ignoring it.
No, he's a passenger.
I'm a passenger right now. So
oh well.
So in terms of what Shaq said, and this is where again, talking about honesty. Why is it?
Wait, Jacoby,
why is it?
Wait, Jacoby. It says, Jacoby, you are so cool. Now, this guy's probably drinking that crazy stuff that Rick serves. I'm going to get tickets to see you. Every time I tell people I know you at the Bulls, they ask if they can meet you. So you have a fan club. A fan club of what? Okay? But
I enjoy meeting people because it's fun. You get to live vicariously through people. You talk to people. It's a great thing. I mean, people are, we take for granted knowing and learning and understanding and listening and talking to people. We take that for granted a lot of times. But in terms of what Shaq said, the thing with what Shaq said, he's asking for honesty only from one party. He's asking for honesty from the Democrat Party. He didn't say anything about the Republican Party, which constantly and consistently lies. He said Donald Trump, we know that he lies and says all these things. And, well, then why is there no outrage towards when Donald Trump lies or when the Republican Party went on the whole tirade about January 6th, telling everybody not to believe your eyes? There's nothing there. So the irony and the ridiculousness of saying, well, the Democrat Party is lying, so we should never trust them. Have you ever met Donald Trump? Have you ever listened to Donald Trump? That doesn't make any sense. So let me finish. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt. So let me finish. So the whole idea of saying that only one party has to be the adult party in the whole situation, regardless of, okay, well, so what? Donald Trump raped somebody. We cannot do that. We have to be honest on both sides. Yes, Biden says a few lies here and there, but Donald Trump consistently tells stories, tells lies, tells a whole bunch of stuff. So we cannot hold the Democrat Party to a completely different standard in that situation. What we have to look at is what actually both men are running on, the policies that they're talking about, which in the debate, yes, we know Biden sounded old and all this other stuff, but he actually put up policies. Donald Trump really didn't. Donald Trump went on the attack and talked about how bad this individual was, how he's the worst president in the world. Didn't give anything in terms of, when the questions were asked about child care and so on and so forth. But then even diving deeper about the platforms each person is running on and the stuff that they are actually promoting. Again, we're glossing over the fact that this man not only is talking about military tribunals for American citizens that he disagreed with, we're glossing over the fact that this man literally asked his national security advisor to shoot protesters that he disagreed with. We're ignoring the fact that this man has said that he wants to be a dictator. He also said that he wants to suspend the Constitution. The fact that he's running on Project 2025, these things that we have to really look at. But instead of looking at those things, we're so focused on, well, Joe Biden's old. Joe Biden, he's, again, I think that Joe Biden should go ahead and step down and somebody else should step in on the convention and have a broken convention. However, if Joe Biden decides to stick through it, I'm sticking with Joe Biden. Why? Because of the things that he's pushing and the policies. And that's essentially it. Why do we, it just makes no sense to me to argue, well, Democrat Party's being so untruthful. Have you met Donald Trump?
Just really quickly, because we only got 2 minutes ago. One of the things I'm curious about, and we can bring this up on tomorrow's show and everything, is that two things that really caught my mind and everything. One is that there's this notion that Jill Biden is kind of doing the Nancy Reagan thing and kind of actually the one that is kind of running some of the damage control and also maybe even
I'd like to just take a moment. I'd like to take a moment to respond to it.
And the other thing that I was really quickly, and we can talk about it on tomorrow as well, is this notion of kind of the Willie Horton, because there's this guy Victor something and everything, and I'm thinking that he's almost like the Willie Horton person that is almost like the albatross that some of the right-wing advertisers are trying to paint on Joe Biden, because he's the gentleman that was a migrant that then committed murder after he had committed murder in El Salvador, I believe it was. So I'm just wondering our thoughts, and we can talk about this on tomorrow, because like I said, we got Russia, Ukraine, and China show coming up in a minute or two.
Don't put me up. I don't have time to respond now. So, don't put me up here. Rick, you can have it.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think we've seen quite a bit of coverage of Biden being old and like tripping over a sandbag on the New York Times that came out has a vendetta against Biden. They're pissy because Biden hasn't granted them enough access, so they have been running a bunch of snippy shit about Biden.
This has just happened since the debate, right? So they didn't have a vendetta before the debate.
This came out last month about the little feud between the Biden White House not giving them.
Here's the thing, right? Everyone knows that Donald Trump is caustic and he lies and he says all sorts of things. He didn't answer the questions, but at the end of the day, this could have been dealt with if Democrats were more honest. And you can blame Republicans all you like, but if you're on the left, you should be pissed off with your own party. I get pissed off with my party in Australia when it doesn't do things properly. I'm pissed off with them right now because of their ridiculous, terrible policies. Why Democrats are refusing to take any responsibility for putting up this candidate is totally beyond me.
And with that, we're going to have to go to Ukraine. So we'll see everybody tomorrow. World Edition. Bye-bye.